Hey everyone, it's Neil, and it's great to be back with you guys. Today, we're going to take a look at Dystropia. I scored the trailer for this, and I thought it would be cool to take a look at scoring the picture, using tons of elements, which I did, and also making a lot of those elements into audio so I could better manipulate them either using plugins or fades in and out, and also getting the general vibe across of what Dystropia really sounds like within 60 seconds to picture. I thought that might be a little more interesting than just the usual walkthroughs that we'll do for a product release. So why don't we take a look and check it out, and you guys can let me know what you think in the comments. All right, so there's a lot to cover here and not a lot of time. Let's just dive into it, but before we do that, I must wear these because I can't see anymore. Here we go. That is the vibe of the trailer, so why don't we dive in. I think the best place to start is with the intro. There's a lot of sound design in this one instance. Why don't we just take a listen through and we can see what's going on. And you'll also see there's some audio, so. Right, so there alone, there are quite a few things happening. So the first thing is this sort of creaky, crumbly thing. Next up, like an atmospheric vibe. And then this re-entry failure, that's actually audio. Let's make that purple. Take a listen. So those three together. Those lead into the logo reveal, which starts here. So the first sound for that is called Subsurface, which is found in Outfalls. And there's a secondary sound called Frozen Tundra, which is also found in the combinations Outfalls. Which felt like sort of eerie and dystopian. So if we take a look at this track in particular, you'll notice I made it audio for really the sole reason to be able to add Fury to it, which is our distortion plugin, and just make it a little more aggressive. So versus it just makes it rumble a little bit more, almost like earthquake rumble. Okay, now down to this menu, Annihilate Alarm. And that is a really cool sound. Let's find that. It's just a neat sound, and it sort of underscores the logo. Next up, they're sort of their radio signals, really. That's the vibe that I was going for and using those. So let's take a look at that channel. So that's using two sounds. One is data. And we also have digital storms. So those are all happening together. These two are audio. This first one was really just to get some more volume out of it. I was playing Volume Wars, treating the trailer. The intro doesn't have that much more happening with the other instances. We do have this Rising Utter Chaos, which is here. And that gives that sense of like urgency. And then the last thing we'll take a look at is reactor meltdown. Again, it's pretty subtle in the mix, but the whole thing sounds like this. So I'll stop there. So once we get through the intro, the track starts to develop. If we start at bar 7, where you're out of the logo, let me not pick my nose. Sorry about that. So we're past the logo point, and now we're past the logo point, and now we need to start to establish what is the vibe here. What are we seeing? What are we hearing? How does that work together? First thing is this dystopian age, which is a rhythm, which is definitely a unique texture. It has that unnerving quality. So along with that, we have animal mutations. So that starts to give you a sense of rhythm and just vibe. If we look at these stings here, right, so let's take it from that point and listen through. So that here is where we have our first introduction of a melody, and sort of like, it's almost like a question, like what am I looking at? This is disturbing imagery, and it sounds concerning. I wanted to find a melody that was sort of like, I don't know what I'm looking at, but it looks disturbing and bleak. So I used these two different patches, Broken Spirit and Isotope. So that melody happens under the backdrop of. And if we jump up here to, again, this reactor meltdown, I chose to make these audio, and I'll show you why. So it's something I could have done in the engine using the gate, but I wanted to move as quickly as my brain was sort of moving with ideas, and so I threw a plugin on called Tremolator, which gives it that the rhythmic aspect. And then I used PSP Vintage Warmer, which just added a little heat, a little extra oomph to it. And in the track, you'll hear how those sort of work. So they give that motion, that feeling of motion, as things are sort of progressing and unfolding as fast as you can. This is another rhythmic. Let's take a look at that. So that's sort of plodding along with this sort of angry, rhythm that has some teeth in it. And then stuff starts to happen on screen after the melody that we need to address. So if we go to 11, so you're seeing this disturbing imagery, and the first is dread and desolation. So I chose to use a sting on that. Let's take a look at that. Again, unnerving is the name of the game here, and then there's a reverse sting. And that is on channel 9. Let's open that up. And that's called Blast Drop Reverse. Since we have so many elements, I'm trying to move quickly through, each one and show you how effective they are, but not necessarily where they are in the product. We have a product overview, we have preset playthrough. We sort of hit that visual. So this is the last sort of part of the intro before it goes into the B section. And this is where I used audio. So if we listen to this sound, it's called Frozen Tundra, and it comes from combination Outfalls. So you'll see on that, if we make it larger, right, there's a fade in, and let's see if we've got some plugins on there. I can't even remember. There was so many. Yes, we have Fury again. So without it, it's pretty solid. And then we just added a little bit more with Fury. And I feel like it just helped it cut. There's so much going on. Sometimes you need a little more distortion, a little more edge. So that was happening. And also this reverse here. So that one I really mangled. I was going for this sort of like crumbling giant, modulation knob on the interface, and the way it just sort of moved, I wanted something to be like, so that worked. Got our micro effects obscene. So let's check this out. Yeah, it's pretty mangly. So if we listen without it, very different. This thing brings everything to the forefront, all that low end and that crunch. We've got a couple reverse stings, which I also made audio to address the picture here. So that was like, all right, we're going to go into this next scene, which is this black and white forest scene. And I needed some sort of reverse element or device, right, to do that. And I felt like that was pretty effective. So if we listen to that unsoloed back from Frozen Tundra, crunchy. And we can't forget the little melody call out, which ties back to sort of a little hint at Oblivion. All right, so moving past this, we're going to go into the next section, and this is where things start to build and become more exciting and open up. And in doing that, I used a lot of different pads. So let's listen through that section, and then we'll take a look at the elements. Why don't we take a listen to the pads first? I wanted them to sort of swell and accentuate what was going on. So if we take a listen here. So the thought here was desolation. It feels bleak. It should be dark. So thus the progression that I used. This is one of the pads. This pad's called Aftermath. And it has interesting things popping out of it. Watch out for that. The next pad. It's a little more angelic almost. But to me, it felt haunting because of the progression being so dark. And then the last one, because 2 pads aren't enough, you need 3, because we're Heavyocity, and that's how we roll. It's a little dirtier. And you'll notice I'm using volume to swell these. Like a wave. So in the mix, I feel like they were pretty effective in sort of conveying that like dark feeling and also it opening up. And, you know, a trailer, you want to generate excitement. Stop hitting the mic, dude. And this sort of opened it up in the second half. It gets larger, it feels bigger, but you still have that bleakness, that darkness, that dystopian sort of vibe. So these definitely on their own say a lot, and then when you start putting 8 billion other elements like I typically do, what was that? That was creepy. They take a bit of a backseat, but without them, it's pretty naked. So obviously the melody at this point needs to develop and start to tell more of the story. So again, using these elements that we looked at before, Broken Spirit and Isotope. So with that, I was going for something that was sort of like, it was dark and not evil dark, but just sort of bleak, depressing, and also a question of like mystery, like what am I seeing? What am I feeling? And to me, that worked pretty well. So there's a lot of other supporting elements going on. So if we take a look here at this rhythmic menu, yeah, so I didn't want the alarm to start off and be continuous, so I used volume to drop it against the other elements, things like this animal mutations rhythm, and also alarms from before. So again, like I said in the beginning, there is a lot going on. If we start listening to that section and maybe hear this. So there's enough of it poking through, you can hear the crunch of it to give you that sense of propulsion and rhythm, along with the melody, which is out front, and the big pads. And on top of that, there are some other elements that will hit picture. So if you look at like this chaotic dissonance, it is very sort of twisted and like, what is that, man? That's gross. Which is what I was going for. Yeah, so it was like, let's throw this element that is dissonant and weird on top of sort of this melody and these chord swelling to score what you're seeing on screen. What we're doing there is we're harnessing the desolation. All right, so we're going to check out the end of the track from this point. There's not that much left. All right, so again, this frozen tundra comes back. With some crispy fury on it. We've got this annihilate alarm. And again, I use that as a device for the logo. Up here, we're sort of fading out with the pads. And then we go into the end with some other elements when we take a look at those. Yeah, that effect is neat. It's sort of like, sounds like this distant alarm concerning this. Again, I made audio. And the idea with that was if you look at the logo and it disintegrates into this gold, I wanted to hit that with a sound from Dystropia that like sort of matched it. So I felt like that did. And you don't really hear it until it gets as loud as it does get. So in the mix. maybe you don't even really hear it. It's sort of there because there's so many elements. And when you're working quickly, sometimes you get excited about a part and you're like, this is so cool. And then you add 14 other things, at least I do. And then, you know, you forget what was there and there's just too many elements to mix. It's sort of like the sum of its parts that really make it work. And you hit that logo and it was enough, and the way it trailed off. So a couple other little things to check out is this amorphous, disturbing something or other. Yeah, that sounds like a just twisted radiation creature or something. So let's hear that. And that sound tails off into the logo out over the darkness. I may have missed a couple of things here and there, but you get the general gist of the track. And then the last thing was I did use a loop from Damage and some hits. And those just really are in the background, but they give it a sense of rhythm. Pretty sparse. And if you listen for those now... Yeah, and it's out. All right, cool. I just wanted to say thanks for watching and tuning in and checking this out. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Definitely leave me some comments below. Give me your thoughts on how you think this worked with Dystropia, with making things audio, hitting picture in a really pronounced way. Does it tell the story? Does it give you a sense of like the darkness and the bleakness of this dystopian sort of aftermath vibe? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And as always, make sure you tune in to our Heavyocity YouTube channel for all the interesting videos so you're in the know about the latest and greatest stuff coming out from us. Again, thanks for watching and take care.